Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on Monday the 15th of October. And here's a couple of little stories that I came across I thought are kind of amusing. There we go. How long should cops be pot free? So there's this big argument coming up right now about pot. And the Toronto Police and the RCMP have said that the police have to be 28 days free of pot before they can come on duty. And so here's another article. Mike McCormack, the Police Association chief, is also screaming foul at the 28-day ruling and that it is untenable, unconstitutional and unfair. Those are just three of the words being used to describe a decree which effectively bans Toronto police officers from using marijuana when it becomes legal on October the 17th. Toronto Police Association President Mike McCormack said it's not realistic for officers and civilian members of the force to be singled out from the rest of society. And so I thought this was kind of interesting because I think that it tells us two things quite clearly, other than the fact that the police are upset about this treatment. The first one is that if you have to be free of pot for 28 days, I think that it's telling us that pot stays in your system for 28 days. And if that is the case, it is going to be virtually impossible to police this, to have some kind of accurate test, because if you have been, say you were in a room with people who were smoking pot, that is in your system for 28 days. And I don't know whether they can tell the levels or the strength, but this is a very different thing from alcohol. Okay, so it's not going to be so easy to do this. And the other thing that it tells us, if the police union association chief is getting into this and is screaming from the rooftops, I think that you can take from that there is more than a handful of police who are smoking pot in their off-duty hours. I don't know how many, but I would imagine to get the police chief's ire, you'd have to be looking at a significant minority. And of course this is why we have this next headline, which is police facing staffing, drug testing hurdles as cannabis legalization nears. And of course they will. Of course they will. If you can't test accurately, you are going to see lawsuits contesting this. And by the way, there are people out there taking physician-prescribed medications like Percocets, Percodan, Oxycontin, fentanyl. These are all opiates, and these are very, very, very strong drugs. And yet they can get into a car and drive without any fear of being tested for opiate use. So this is going to be contested in the courts. It's going to be a big mess, probably for about 2, 3 or 4 years till they come to terms with this. And being a businessman myself, you know, I've been watching this rollout, and of course I talk with my other friends who have small to medium-sized businesses, and we are just laughing our heads off at the government just rubbing its little hands together and counting money that it hasn't got yet. And of course people who are worried about the rollout of the marijuana legalization, I mean, some of the articles in the paper are just unbelievable. You'd think that the whole country was going to melt down. Now I would say here that in Europe, in Amsterdam, they have been legally using marijuana for 41 years. Now, Amsterdam is probably one of the most beautiful cities. Holland is one of the most peaceful countries and beautiful countries in the world, known mostly for its other growth product, which is tulips and flowers. And of course it is a thriving import-export country. But, you know, in 41 years I think we would have seen if there was going to be a problem. And the other thing is that what I think is going to happen is, you know, with our polarized politics, there is every chance that Andrew Scheer is going to be elected next year to replace Justin Trudeau, and Scheer is not a fan of legalized marijuana. So you could see a complete reversal of this. So what person is going to put their name on a list, use a credit card, go to a government-run agency or store, anywhere where there is some kind of paper trail, because if the rules change, all of a sudden they've got a big list of people who are using marijuana. And the other thing, of course, is that everybody who is using marijuana today, whether recreationally or medically, already has a supply line. Okay, it's already well established. It's been going on for quite a while. Everyone gets along together, and why would you change? Why would you change? And you know that the price, the government price, is going to be far more expensive than the street price. Firstly, the street price is a lot more flexible because there is a lot of profit involved in street selling of drugs. Okay, so that price can fluctuate quite a bit, and of course when it's overpriced and there's a paper trail, you know, you're going to go down to the road to your local dealer and just keep on doing what you've always done. It's cool, it's happening. So I don't think you're going to see a big wave of change. I don't think you're going to see a big wave of money suddenly flocking to these stores just because it's suddenly legal. So I think they're in for a bit of a shock. And as I say, I think it's going to take, you know, 1 to 4 years for this to really settle in and to see exactly how it's going to look as it is being rolled out. But, you know, given the results in Amsterdam and in Portugal, Portugal legalized all drugs. And I have many customers who go to Portugal for winter vacations, and they tell me it is a beautiful country, it is not a den of iniquity, and the streets are not plugged with drug users and needles and goodness knows what else. And in fact, the overdose numbers have gotten better since they legalized everything. That was 12 years ago. And Ontario would do well to phone both of these countries and just ask them what their experience was. Just ask them what they would do again. So folks, I don't think there's going to be anything to see here. You can just keep on moving, it'll be just fine, and I don't think the roads are going to be any more dangerous, and I don't think you're going to see people just walking up and down the street smoking pot just because they can do. I think you're going to see just an awful lot of people heave a great sigh of relief that they are no longer breaking the law. So there's my thoughts on marijuana legalization. Now, next story. Drive clean, put in park. And boy, am I glad that that's happened. That was just an annoyance for motorists to have to go around every 2 years and have their car e-tested, as it's called, for emissions testing. And it costs $30 or $35 for your emissions test, and you get a certificate. And what was interesting when they first rolled that out, okay, the emissions testing was so tight, even brand new cars couldn't pass. So they backed off the testing, the rigorous testing, and all of a sudden every car could pass. And so anyway, the statistics are we've gone from something like 16% of vehicles failing the e-test. We're now down to about 3% of cars failing the e-test. But you know, another interesting telltale thing about how bogus this whole e-testing thing is, when you go north of where I live, somewhere between Kinmount and Minden, these towns are about 20 to 30 minutes north of where I live. You cross some imaginary border, and for some reason CO2 doesn't have any effect past that imaginary line, because you don't have to get an e-test done. Now, don't you think that's interesting? To me, you know, if we have an issue with carbon dioxide, its effects are everywhere, and but we seem to ignore that fact when we bring in those kind of rules. It's come out that the carbon tax is going to be used to pay promises, and how come we don't factor in forest fires? Can you imagine how much CO2 a forest fire adds to the atmosphere? And we seem to have tons of forest fires, you know, up to 200, 220, 230 forest fires a year in Ontario alone. That's a lot of CO2, my friend. A lot of CO2. Okay, well, I hope you found this informative and you enjoyed the discussion. Please, if you did, like and subscribe below, and we will talk real soon. This is Hound Dog Steve signing off. You have a great day, and I'll be making some more videos this week. I'm on vacation. There you go. First time in a while. See ya. Bye now.